Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denai Pauly. I'm a Senior Advisor to the National Director at MBDA, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's third and final pre-application conference for our Access to Capital Innovative Finance broad agency announcement. And today's focus is measuring success in budget pitfalls. We'll start with a few housekeeping rules. Throughout the conference, if you would like to ask questions, please place them in the chat, and we will do our best to respond to them in the chat as well as real-time live at designated times throughout the conference. As I mentioned, today's conference is focused on our Access to Capital Innovative Finance Notice of Funding opportunity. So if you are a business looking for business development support, please be sure to visit our website at mbda.gov. As you ask your questions, please keep them relevant to the topic at hand and avoid duplicating questions whenever possible. I'm joined today by some wonderful colleagues who I'll introduce. Taylor Carter DeSanto, Special Assistant to the National Advisor at MBDA. Nikita Chambers, our Program Manager for the Grants Management Unit. And Joanne Hill, our Chief of the Office of Business Development, who I will hand it over to today to kick us off.
Thank you, Denai. It's an honor and pleasure to be here with all of you to be a part of our final session of the Notice of Funding Opportunity for our Innovative Capital Grant. So a quick overview of what we will cover today as we do our deep dive into budget pitfalls and measuring success. You've already heard the protocol. First, I will share with you some important dates. I will share with you MBDA's alignment and authority. And under the Notice of Funding Opportunity Announcement / broad agency announcement, we will cover budget pitfalls. We will cover critical and important forms that you will need to ensure are completed, including the SF 424 and the SF is Standard Form 424, 424A, 424B, a sample project narrative overview, if you will, the CD 511 form, and the SFLLL lobbying form. We will also do a deep dive and stretch out a bit on what measuring success means with regard to your application and if you're the successful applicant. And we will finish up with sharing with you the agency contact if you have any questions between now and the deadline that's soon approaching. And then we'll also have Q&A. But we will also take Q&A, as Ms. Denai Pauly has mentioned, intermittently throughout the presentation. And then, of course, we will extend a farewell and thank you and wish you the best of luck. With that, we're going to get started. So important dates. This competition date was published on May the 5th of 2022, and the deadline for submission is Monday, June the 6th. That's this coming Monday at June 6th at 11:59 p.m. And Monday as in Monday after the major holiday. We will not be accepting applications we will accept them, but the competition end date is Monday, June 6th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. There will only be electronic applications for this competition. There will not be any paper submissions. So your application must be submitted online through the Grants Online. And please allow enough time for submission of your application. Do not wait until the last minute. If there's one best practice and nugget that I can offer you, it's to please, whatever you do not wait until the last minute to submit your application, because you allow no margin for error and no margin to go back and correct when you wait until the last minute. And then last critical point on important dates, the anticipated start date for this award is September the 1st, 2022. So a little bit about MBDA's strategic alignment. First, our mission is MBDA is the premier champion and advocate for minority business enterprises within the federal government. Our mission is to promote the growth and global competitiveness of these firms, the more than 11 million of those that are located throughout the United States. And our strategy ultimately is to increase the number of MBEs and increase them through size and scale and increase of their gross revenues. And those are ultimately sales. The program authority. The statutory authority for this particular program is the Minority Business Development Act, and that is under 15 United States Code subsections 9501 through 9508. And specifically, if you care to look them up, subsection 9511 and 9513. And if you want to reference these slides back, please know that they will be available at the end of our presentation. Within 48 hours, they will be uploaded to our website, and you'll have access to the presentation as well as the slides as a point of reference. So a little bit about the award itself before we dive into the budget pitfalls in measuring success. MBDA expects to award $884,559 for this award in fiscal year 22. And that's the funds for the financial assistance of one award. There will only be one award for this competition. It is a 2-year term, a 2-year award cycle. So what that means is that there will be one in year 1 for $884,559 and one in year 2 for the same amount of $884,559. The total for the 2 years, of course, comes up to right at $1.77 million over the 2-year award cycle collectively. The funding amounts referenced in this NOFO are subject to the availability of appropriated funds. We anticipate, we have all hope and confidence that the funds will be appropriated through Congress, but we have to provide that caveat always when we're providing new competitions and funding announcements. The publication of this NOFO does not obligate the U.S. Department of Commerce or MBDA to any specific broad agency announcement agreement or to obligate all or any part of available funds. And I just want to mention that I'll say NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity Announcement, and Broad Agency Announcement interchangeably. When I do say that, just know that they're one in the same for purposes of this award. The second notable mention about this award is MBDA will issue, again, one award for a 12-month period. That's a 12-month period. And the award start date will begin on September 1st of this year, 2022, and it will run through August 31st of 2023. Again, the start date, September 1, 2022, end date, August 31st, 2023. Receipt of any prospective funding also is contingent upon, again, the availability of funds and appropriation from Congress. Satisfactory performance is also the other critical caveat here. If you receive this funding and you are the successful applicant, there will be satisfactory performance requirements that you will need to ensure are made, and continued relevance to program objectives, and will be at the sole discretion of the Department of Commerce. And then lastly, selected applicants will receive funding through a broad agency announcement under this grant. After the award is made, MBDA may assist the project by means of a post-award conference. We typically always have those 100% of the time. Ongoing collaboration, coordination, and communication. So, what are some of the common pitfalls that happen with mistakes with the budgets over the years? What we've seen. So missing information in the application within the budget for years 1 through 2 versus the entire 4 years. This is just hypothetically speaking, and the required standard forms for each of those programmatic years. So what do you mean by that, Joanne? What I mean by that is when you submit your application, you will be required to submit a budget and all of the documentation that goes along with that budget for years 1 and year 2. The other notable mention for things that we've seen as common mistakes and errors that's really caused problems with merit review, transposing numbers. Please make certain that you have a second pair of eyes. When you're submitting your budget, you're thinking about the budget, you're thinking about other qualitative aspects of the application to include applicant capability. You want to talk about your narrative around that, et cetera, et cetera. Please make certain that you have a second pair of eyes to help ensure that your numbers are accurate. Why? Because the budget is a heavy part of your merit review. So when we're looking at these applications and we're looking at, we're looking at this as business acumen and how astute are you at making certain that your money that you're putting in to request this grant is 100% accurate. The other critical note, the alignment of your standard forms 424, 424A, and the budget narrative. Please make certain that the numbers that you have in your SF424, your 424A, and the budget narrative are in alignment, because we have a merit panel review team that's going to comb through that budget with a fine-tooth comb. And if you have a line item, hypothetically speaking, for what you're going to pay your staff, what type fringe benefits you're going to offer them, and you itemize those fringe benefits to cover health insurance, taxes, et cetera, and you have a budget amount, and then you go over to, that's in your budget narrative where you've listed all of this out and itemized it, great. But then your alignment of that and your bottom line number doesn't align with what you have in your 424A. Or your 424 is off. That's a problem. So please, again, make certain that the alignment of your standard forms are synchronized. The next important note is proposing more funding than allocated for the award year and cycle. Please, you can propose an increase in the matching funds that you would like to offer, but when it comes down to proposing the funding that we are offering for this particular award, $884,559, please ensure that you stay in alignment with what the award is being offered at. Next, not proposing the full amount of funding allowed in a given year of the award cycle. There are a lot of MBEs, you saw the first slide, more than 11 million, that need help. And what we are constantly hearing is they need money, they need help, and you don't have borders with this program, so you can help these firms all across America. So not proposing the full amount of the funding allowed in a given year is going to send red flags all over the place. Next, completion of standard forms and the budget narrative for 2 years, not 3 years, 2 years. And the 10 months is not a part of this, but completion of the standard form for 2 budget years, to be clear, 2 budget years. And we'll make certain that that's updated before it goes on our website. We will also want to make certain that your standard form LLL, which is the lobbying form, you must complete that form. That is critical. And the next is the signed Commerce Department CD 511 form. These are deal breakers. Anything that you don't sign with those standard forms, including your 424s, your 424A, your budget narrative, and your CD 511 and SFLLL, you must have each of those forms for both of the 2 years of the award cycle. And then last, but certainly not least, I must tell you this. Register in the SAM before submitting an application. Please, please, please do not wait until the last minute. This is a critical action and can take at least 2 weeks to process. If you have not applied for SAM and you don't have a SAM, they call it a unique entity ID now, a UEI is what they refer to it as, used to be a DUNS number. If you do not have that as of today, I'm not going to say that it's going to be too late for you to apply, but if you don't have it, as soon as we hang up from this meeting today, you need to get on it and have it submitted by tomorrow. That's a deal breaker. If you don't have a SAM number, you cannot apply for the grant. These are not rules that we make as an agency. These are rules that the SAM.gov, as in Uncle Sam, requires for federal grant recipients as well as federal contractors on any level.
Ms. Hill, this is Ms. Chambers. Thank you for that information. But before moving on to the next slide, there are a few questions in the chat that I would like to address. The first question is, do we need to submit a budget for both years or just the first year? And SF 424A, which is the required budget form, is required for years 1 and 2, along with a detailed budget narrative for each year. The second question for the application is our timeline and projected goals only to be for September 2022 through August 2023. As outlined in the Notice of Funding Opportunity announcement, the goals should be submitted for both years and included in the application package specifying year 1 and year 2. The next question I would like to address is the nomination for Minority Veteran-Owned Firm of the Year and the winning nomination gives the winner a grant. No, this is a competitive process and you will need to apply through grants.gov. That website is www.grants.gov. The next question we received, can you provide further explanation regarding the requirement for the non-federal cost share of 33%? The non-federal cost share is a 33% requirement, and the successful applicant is responsible for providing that information, and it should be outlined on their SF 424A under the non-federal share column, as well as included in the detailed budget narrative. The last question before moving to the next slide is, if this is a 2-year award, why do we need to submit 3 years and 10 months forms? I don't understand that question. And this is a 2-year award and you have to submit your SF 424 application package for 2 years. Ms. Hill, I would like to move on to the next slide.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers.
So the next question for you, Ms. Hill, what are the standard application forms?
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. So standard applications, please refer to the application package, if you will. That's available at, as Ms. Chambers just mentioned, grants.gov. Also, please review each form to determine which is required with the submission. I just gave you an example of what those are. Each applicant may not be required to submit all forms listed, depending on the type, the project type or the applicant type. So my next question is, what is the SF 424 and why do I need to complete and sign this form? Yeah. So the SF 424 must be signed by the authorized representative. Essentially, the authorized representative is the person or entity, the senior principal at the entity, oftentimes who's going to be responsible for ensuring that the award is administered and carried out successfully. Electronic signatures submitted through grants.gov satisfy this requirement, and one form will cover all funding periods.
Ms. Hill, before we move on to the next slide, I want to address a question in the chat, a few questions. If your SAM account has expired, unfortunately, you will not be able to apply for this funded opportunity announcement. That is not an MBDA rule, but that is a OMB requirement. And I will highly recommend that all potential applicants on this call validate and check your SAM account. That website is www.sam.gov. The next question that I would like to move forward to is the slide says one form will cover all funding periods. However, you said a few times separate forms must be submitted for years 1 and 2. Can you clarify? The SF424 is the application form that provides the application details. That is one complete form, as Ms. Hill just stated, that should be signed by the authorized representative. On this form, there is a section on page 2 of the SF424, which asks for the funding. You must include the funding for 2 years. Now, the SF424A, which is the budget should be submitted for both years as well as a detailed budget narrative. If those forms are not received, that can disqualify you from the competition. Joanne, the next question, I think someone is confusing the opportunity announcement. This is the access to capital, innovative finance, pre-application conference, and not the business center pre-application conference. We have completed those, but that opportunity announcement will close on June 2nd, but it is not relevant to this particular pre-application conference. Ms. Hill, on to the next slide, please.
Okay. So I wanted to share with you a snapshot of what this SF424 looks like. You just heard from Ms. Chambers that you will need to include the full amount for the 2 years of the award. There's a basic information. You will note here at the top where it says type of submission. You will also be able to note additional information about the type of application that it is, et cetera, et cetera. But this is all a part of what you will find in Grants Online, basic company information. We're going to be asking for who the actual authorized representative is in this form, as well as their contact information. This is just a snapshot again of what that SF424 looks like for the representative, the individual on the call who asked a question about the form. And then as she indicated as well, these are OMB forms. These are not MBDA forms. These are forms that are generated by the Office of Management and Budget for the United States.
Thank you, Ms. Hill, for that. Now, moving on to the SF424A, which is very, very important. Can you explain what this budget form is, this non-construction budget form is, and why should our potential applicants submit this form with their application package?
Thank you. So to your point, Ms. Chambers, we have this 424A, and essentially what this is going to help us to understand is for both years. Again, the 424A is for both years. The 424 is the standard form where you ensure that all of what you're going to be accounting for in terms of the funding and the years that you're carrying out the business development services will be covered. Here, we want to drill down. We want you to talk about, for example, this is a hypothetical here. Under the federal share, you have a federal amount there under the estimated unobligated funds. The non-federal share is typically where you're going to input your matching requirement. And then you're going to also show what those will be so that we see that you have your 1/3 matching funds requirement met for a total of the bottom line that would include the 884,559 plus at minimum your cost share and then the total. And you need that again for both years of the award, 2022 and 2023.
Ms. Hill, thank you for that. But before moving on, I would like to address two questions in the chat. The text is very small and hard to read. Please note that this presentation, as well as the recording, will be available on MBDA's website within 72 hours. Our website is www.mbda.gov. We have another question. We are talking a lot about form filling, but I'm interested in better understanding what the previous programs lacked and what you want the new awardee to do differently. These pre-application conferences we did not prepare them to do a comparison of what previous programs lacked, but to help you and assist you successfully apply for our new programs. But we do have some frequently asked questions on our website at www.mbda.gov that you may be interested in. Back to the slides. Ms. Hill, what is the signed SF424B, and can you explain what that form is to our potential applicants?
Yes, the 424B, that is assurances for non-construction programs. It's a budget narrative that must be completed and submitted for all non-construction applications. And it must be signed by the authorized representative. You heard me talk about them previously, and this must be signed by the authorized representative. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. I want to share with you what this form looks like. This is just an illustration, if you will, of what the SF424B looks like. So when you're completing the application, you'll see this form, and we just wanted to share that with you. Okay.
Ms. Hill, what exactly is the CD511?
So the CD511 is a certification regarding lobbying. There are a lot of folk who love coming to Washington, D.C. and being engaged and involved in public service and being a voice. It's also a certification regarding debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters, drug-free workplace requirements, and again, lobbying. Again, it must be signed by the authorized representative. A sample of that form is here. When you do complete the application, please review it, ensure that you understand it, ensure that all information is completed, and lastly, again, please make certain that it's signed. And the SFLLL disclosure of lobbying activities might seem repetitive, but it is a different form. It's got a different OMB classification here. See the number here, most of them are up in the upper right-hand corner. Disclosure of lobbying activities. You can see how serious this is. Again, you will be required to complete this form in totality, as well as have the authorized representative to sign the form at the bottom. Very important.
Ms. Hill, what is involved with the detailed budget narrative, and how detailed should it be?
So the applicant must provide a detailed justification for all budget line items in sufficient detail to enable the proposed reviewers, and that's the merit review panel, to evaluate the appropriateness of the funding requested. So for example, staffing, I mentioned that earlier, infrastructure, work activities, materials, supplies, equipment, etc. The budget justification must be broken out and detailed using the same budget categories and aligned with the completed SF424. All total costs on the budget narrative must match and align with the 424 and the SF424A. I mentioned that to you earlier. Again, the reason why we're mentioning it again is because This has been one of the issues that we found in the past that's really hurt great applicants. And the budget narrative must have the same correct federal and non-federal, if applicable. If the applicant would charge fees or generate income in connection with the operation of the project, it must provide a description of the fees that it is proposing to charge clients. And of special note, fees that are not a fee for service, client fee, or membership fee must be approved by MBDA. Again, fees that are not a fee for service, a client fee, or membership fee must be approved by MBDA.
Ms. Hill, would you explain some of the required travel items that should be included in these approved applications?
Sure. So some of the travel requirements that should be included as a part of your budget are things that we require you to have. If you have read the NOFO/broad agency announcement, this is something that should stick out for you. If you have not read the NOFO in its totality and comprehensively, please do so. If you are serious about competing for this award, please ensure that you have read the NOFO. These travel requirements that we have embedded in the NOFO include language that each applicant must include in its budget forms and narrative travel costs for 2 key personnel to attend the events included below. In the event that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to cause limitations on travel and gatherings, the events will be virtual. However, for those that you need to ensure you include, number 1 is National Minority Enterprise Development Week. That is our preeminent premier conference that's held annually. Number 2 is our National Training Conference. That's our training conference that we hold for all of our investments. We call them our National Network of Equities. Those are all of the programs that we invest in as an agency that we pull together and offer training for them on an annual basis. And then lastly, NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, grants workshop training. Oftentimes we can combine that with other training that's offered at the National Training Conference, but for these purposes, you need to itemize those to ensure that you have a line item to cover your participation in those. If you have other questions, please refer to Section 8 under Other Information of this NOFO for additional information pertaining to required travel.
What is the indirect cost rate agreement? And can you explain how important that is if one of our potential applicants prepare their application to use an indirect cost rate?
Applicants requesting to charge indirect costs to the grant are required to submit a copy of their current and signed indirect cost rate agreement with the application package. Again, if you're requesting to charge indirect costs to the grant, you will be required to submit a copy of your current and signed indirect cost rate agreement with the application. If an applicant does not have a current indirect cost rate established by a cognizant federal agency, please provide a statement to this effect. We have found this to be the case with partnerships with municipals, colleges and universities, etc. But please ensure that you follow the guidance provided here. If a successful applicant includes indirect cost rates in their budget and has not established an indirect cost rate with a cognizant federal agency, the applicant will be required to obtain such a rate in accordance with Section B06 of the Department of Commerce's Financial Assistance Standard Terms and Conditions that's dated November the 12th, 2020. And I'm going to share with you a little more. So Regarding the format requirements for your award submission, all pages must be single-spaced and should be composed of at least 11-point font with 1-inch margins on 8.5 by 11-inch paper. And I know that is very particular. Again, those are not our rules. Those are the rules that are put in place for submission of awards to the federal government. The total proposal shall not exceed 20 pages, including the title page, the table of contents, applicant narrative, literature cited, budget narrative, letters of support or letters of commitment, if any, and organizational structure. Okay? The following items are not included in the 20-page limit. So what that means is the section that I just covered in the prior bullet, those are the things that can be included as a part of the 20 pages that you have. These additional items do not count against you as a part of your 20-page limit, and those are resumes and bios of key personnel and required forms. Those forms that we talked about, the 424, 424A, B, City 511, and LLL, okay, those do not count against you. Failure to follow the requirements may result in the rejection of the application. Any PDF or other attachments that are included in an electronic application must meet the above format requirements when printed. So a good idea is you've got these on a computer, print them, see what they look like, ensure they meet the criteria that has been outlined here regarding the format. Very important.
Thank you for that information, Ms. Hill. To move further along in the presentation, I would like to go to the next question on the slide. But one particular question in the chat about the conferences, all the conferences held in DC, because one of the potential applicants did not see a specific location mentioned in the NOFO. The conference location may vary and it will be shared once it's selected. You can just do an estimate for 2 individuals at $2,000 to attend. Moving to the next question, Ms. Hill. What is the unique entity identifier and system for award management, better known as SAM?
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. So I talked about it earlier, I touched on it, but each applicant, unless the applicant is eligible for an exception under 2 CFR subsection 25110B, C, or D, is required to, number 1, register in SAM before submitting an application. Again, do not wait to the last minute. Provide a valid unique entity identifier in the application. If you have a SAM number and if you are registered in SAM, you will have this entity identifier, unique entity identifier. Third, continue to maintain an active registration with SAM with current information at all times with the applicant, because sometimes you might not realize that your SAM is up for expiration. Please make certain that you check to ensure that your SAM is current and is not about to expire this weekend. Please. Next, MBDA may not make a federal award to an applicant until the applicant has complied with all applicable unique entity identifier and SAM requirements. Okay, MBDA may not make a federal award to an applicant until the applicant has complied with all applicable unique entity identifier and SAM requirements. You heard Ms. Chambers mention that earlier. If an applicant has not fully complied with the requirements by the time MBDA is ready to make the award, MBDA may not determine that the applicant is not qualified to receive a federal award and use that determination for a basis for making the award to another applicant. Please ensure you have your SAM.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. That was a lot of information. And I just want to reiterate the website for SAM is www.sam.gov. And as Ms. Hill just stated, we have a question, Ms. Hill. Yes, you do need your SAM number before you can apply to this announcement. Ms. Hill, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. So we're gonna dive into measuring success and the impact of the proposals. So this particular section that I'm going to cover covers 40 points of your application. Please take note. And this information that I am covering is in the NOFO. It's in the NOFO/broad agency announcement. So each complete application will be evaluated based on the criteria included here that I will share. A complete application is one that contains the information detailed in section 4B, content and form of application. The number of points that can be earned for each criterion will be shared here, with 100 points as the maximum total that can be earned. So the maximum amount of points that any applicant can earn is 100 points. The criterion considers the effectiveness of the proposed project, including the alignment to the program objectives. That's 8 points. Please understand, we cover program objectives up front in the NOFO. If you don't have a copy of it, you need to have a copy of it besides you, frankly, right now as we're going through this. Second, the quality and feasibility of the project and implementation and timeline. Of this 40-point section under impact of the proposed project, 7 points of that will count towards the quality and feasibility of the project implementation and the timeline that you propose. Next, the breadth and quality of the applicant's strategic partners and alliances to support the non-traditional financing ecosystem serving MBEs. For those of you that attended parts 1 and parts 2 of this session, we did a deep dive on that and what we're looking for with regard to strategic partners and alliances and how you leverage those to ensure that the needs of MBEs to secure alternative sources of capital is being met. That counts for 10 points. Next and last, under this section, the appropriateness of the proposed project goals and objectives section of the application, including the monitoring and contingency plans. I touched on that on a presentation that we did earlier in the week, including the monitoring and contingency plans. For example, if COVID hits, if there is an unforeseen circumstance that impacts the financial industry, again, this particular award, we are looking for innovative solutions, innovative financing solutions. In our presentation that took place early on last week, and we touched on it again earlier this week in part 2, we're not looking to tell you what we want. What we will say is that we give you about 8 different ideas and thoughts around what we think innovation would be like, would look like. But that is not a directive or prescription or to be prescriptive that this is what we want. You might have ideas that are totally innovative and might pick a nugget or two from what we've put there, but stretch out on it and say, hey, this is what the market needs. This is what they're looking for. We've seen those ideas around the country with different efforts and outreach that we've done. That's what we're looking for in our partner who bids on this proposal as a successful applicant. Innovation, creativity, and impact ultimately to MBEs and seeking alternative sources of capital. And lastly, how well the analysis ties with the project implementation timeline. Be realistic. Be realistic with what you propose and make certain that it's attainable. This particular pillar counts for 15 points. The next section under success Applicant capability. Again, we talked about this a lot early on in parts 1 and 2 of this presentation that can be found on our website at mbda.gov. But what I will share is this again is a very heavily weighted segment of the application process. And as our merit panel reviewers look at this section, the things that they're going to be looking for with regard to the applicant that helps them determine are they the best applicant to run this program includes its personnel and do they possess the experience, the background, and the qualifications to accomplish this project? Again, experience, background, and qualifications are critical. Did they include a resume for who they'd like to have as a part of this staff? This is a large grant for us as an agency. $884,559 is a large grant for MBDA. It's not massive, but it's bigger than the average size grant that we have let for various programs throughout our portfolio of investments. The criterion, again, is going to include the quality of the knowledge, experience, and demonstrated track record of the applicant or key implementing partners. We talked about the ecosystem earlier. We're going to be looking at who are the proposed ecosystem partners that you'd like to have as a part of the network of resources that you're going to be helping MBEs with securing non-traditional lending sources. MBE access to capital initiatives through technical assistance or research and data and business development with weight towards specific examples of success. So what does that mean? We want you to tell us if you have examples of success that you can share that you have carried out or that you can prove through research and data or from market demand through inputs that you can share that help us to gain greater insight around why you are the best applicant for this. That's what we want to know. If you can share examples of success, great. That's even better. That particular section of the applicant capability accounts for 20 points, 20 of the 25 points. Next, again, knowledge, experience, qualifications of the key project personnel and understanding of their roles in implementing the project. If you have staff that you are proposing to and you have their resumes, that is wonderful. If you have potential partners that you're going to be partnering with as a strategic partner or strategic alliance, and you have information that you can include through a letter of support, a memorandum that you sign with them as a part of your submission. Great. That is wonderful. That is in your bullet is worth 5 points. In totality, the applicant capability is worth 25 points. Again, take into consideration some of the nuggets that I've shared with you that you might consider to help strengthen your application package. And if you have members of the ecosystem that you feel would make a great partner, a great supporter, someone that you'd like to bring on board to spearhead this project for you as the project director or director of the program, that's great. All of that is a big plus. That lets us know you're ready to go, you're going to hit the ground running and make us proud. Next, the applicant budget for 35 points. The criterion here is it evaluates the budget to determine if it's realistic, reasonable, allowable, allocable, and commensurate with the project needs and the time frame, as well as the accuracy of the budget breakdown. I've shared with you, I think I've hit home enough with you, the criticality and importance and and why it's vital that the budget is thorough, that is accurate, realistic, and that the timeframes and the project needs are met. Please, again, make certain that you have a second pair of eyes that are supporting you on this, and a third. If you have a third, that's even better. So submission guidelines and content and the form of the application, a couple things I wanted to really capture here that are mandatory, and that if you do not include them, these are things, again, that will result in either you getting points deducted or disqualification. You must have a title page. If you don't have a title page, that's an automatic 5-point deduction. Second, a table of contents. If you don't have a table of contents, that's an automatic 5-point deduction. If you omit the applicant narrative, that's a total disqualification. The budget narrative, if you omit that, total disqualification. If you omit submitting the SF424, any one of the 424As for one of the given years, total disqualification. And note, all project proposals will be evaluated and applicants will be selected based on the level at which the proposal addresses the evaluation criteria above and that we've covered. Less any points deducted for failure to include the mandatory items that I've noted here. So make certain that you take note of these items. Make certain that you have your title page, your table of contents, and each of the 3 sections of the application, including your applicant narrative, the budget narrative, and the forms that you have here. Okay, now review and selection process. There will be an initial screening of the application prior to the formal review process. For each application will receive one of these. They'll receive an initial administrative screening to ensure that all required forms, signatures, and documents are present and included in the application. An application will not be evaluated by the review panel if, number 1, the application is received after the closing date. There are no exceptions to that June 6th deadline. Applications must be submitted. We can't help. Number 2, the application packet does not include an application narrative, a budget narrative, an SF424A, an SF424, and an SF424A. The project synopsis and description fails to address the program objectives. See section 1B for more on that. The program priorities and section 1B, subsection 1, agency requirements for the project. If the application falls within the scope of an existing MBDA competitive program or announcement for federal program or duplicates a project previously awarded. We want innovation. So what we're looking for is innovative solutions for alternative sources of capital for MBEs. So if you give us something that we've had or something that we have seen that we do through one of our programs currently, that is not what we're looking for. And then lastly, the principal purpose of the activities in the application is to provide a direct benefit or service to MBDA and not MBEs. If you give us an application where you're looking to provide a service to the agency and not to the clients that we serve, meaning the minority business enterprises, your application will be disqualified. So, and I think if you've read the NOFO and / broad agency announcement, you get that. The last notable mention, MBDA in its sole discretion may continue to review the review process for an application that is missing non-substantive information that easily may be rectified or cured. And that sometimes is what we call clarification and negotiation. If there are things that are missing, if we have a question where we see this is really, really an awesome, innovative idea that we want to fund, and there is some additional information that we will require, we can do a negotiation or clarification, and that has been done in the past. So what is the merit review panel? Who are they and what is this? So the merit review panel is a panel of 3, and each responsive application will receive an independent merit review by a panel. This panel is qualified to evaluate the applications submitted based on the published criteria. And each of these panels also have a chairperson. You have 3 panel members plus a panel chairperson. Note, any applicant scoring at least 60 points and above will be considered for selection. And that's pretty generous. So if you are an applicant and you score at least 60 points or above, you will be considered. Applicants that receive fewer than 60 points will not be considered for funding. And now I would like to open it up for questions. I know that we are right at the top of the hour, but if there is one question that we can take, Ms. Chambers, I'd like to take that. Before we do that, though, I would also like to say, please, please, please go to our website. We've put a lot of energy and thought into our frequently asked questions. Those are ready for your review. Many of the questions that you asked today are covered in those FAQs. And if they're not, I will provide you with Ms. Chambers' contact information at the back end of this session so that you can reach out to her to ask any additional questions that you might have. Ms. Chambers, are there any questions? Is there one critical question that might not be covered in our FAQs that you see that we can address?
At this time, Joanne, we have addressed all of the questions in the chat. I just want to reiterate that the recording as well as the presentation will be posted to MBDA's website in the next 72 hours. Thank you all and good luck.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. So we have, again, her contact information at nchambers@mbda.gov, contact number, and you have our website there. Again, this presentation will be made available. Thank you, thank you, thank you all again for being a part of today's part 3 of 3 for Innovative Capital, Access to Capital, our MBDA financing solutions, alternative financing solutions for MBEs. Wishing each of you the best of luck and thanks again for your participation today. Thank you.